The Las Vegas Strip is one of the most well-known locations in America. Tons of people travel there every single year for fun, vacations, and the biggest attraction, gambling. But in my experience, most everyone there is horrendously depressed. Watching people in their mid-50s pull away over and over at the slot machines hoping for just one win, lots of people will say that's a gambling addiction, and a lot of times they're right. It feels like you rarely see it portrayed in anime because sad anime girls are an affront to God, but deep down, HSR players know that 99% of gamblers quit right before they hit a Qingque damage, baby. Welcome to my Qingque guide, where I'm going to be teaching you how to win big. If you enjoy these types of videos, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more gambling game content. And with all that being said, my name is Braxophone, and let's talk about Qingque right after I read this ad. If you're a fan of games that are harder to beat than Magnus Carlsen at a game of chess, then it's a good thing this video is sponsored by Punishing Gray Raven. Punishing Gray Raven, or PGR for short, is a free-to-play anime-style action RPG that has one of the highest difficulty curves of any gacha game I've ever seen in my entire life. Never, and I mean never, have I ever wanted to play a hot anime girl so goddamn bad that I was willing to fight off Google AI military intelligence grade bosses in a regular story mission, at least until I discovered PGR. Now, I don't want to spoil too much of the story, but in this patch, Wintry Shackles, your goal is to find out the dark secret behind Project Winter. Along with new story, the patch also comes with 3 new coatings, one for Lucia, one for Bianca, and one for Karenina. And most importantly, we're getting the new frame Lucia Unlimited Midriff. Lucia Crimson Weave is one of my favorite character designs they've released and might be the first character I spend money on, so I'm really glad they sponsored this video. Outside of the new Lucia frame, there's a ton of amazing and fun frames with different playstyles, and there's also tons of different challenging bosses. The new Lilith boss fight looks insane, and it's a welcome challenge for any player looking to test themselves. And of course, there's a new fun event, Cooking Lulu, where you can help Lucia manage her restaurant, and it's absolutely adorable. If you love insanely fun combat, compelling characters, a story involving the extinction of mankind, robots, or if you just like the Nier series, you'll love PGR. Oh, and they have a PC client too, so for those of you guys who don't play on mobile a ton, there's that. Get started with my link in the description or pinned comment and join me in one of the most fun and challenging games I have ever played. Despite her being a gambling gremlin, Qingque is also an atomic bomb. You remember Imbibitor Lune, the guy that eats all of your skill points with a basic attack? Well, Qingque does exactly that. Really high damage for a 4-star, and it's multi-target. The only difference is that she's actually fun to play. And by fun to play, I mean hitting the reset button until you get really lucky one time. This absolute gacha gremlin can hold up to 4 tiles from 3 different suits at any time and draws 1 tile at the start of every ally's turn. When she gets 4 tiles that match the same suit, she eats all of the tiles to get an enhanced basic attack and an attack bonus. If your tile luck is no different from your relics, don't give up. By using her skill, you can draw 2 tiles and increase her damage dealt until the end of her turn. When you win big and reach max stacks of 4, you can end up with a damage bonus of 112% at E0 for that attack. But with one of her traces, she can gain an extra 10% per stack, putting her max damage bonus at 152% at talent level 10, which is max for E0, which, you know, is absolutely disgusting. The luckiest thing you can do with this character is get really unlucky. With one of her traces, she gets a skill point back after using her skill, but it is only once per battle, and you're barely gonna feel it at all. Now, as for her ultimate, it dishes out some damage and automatically gives her 4 tiles of the same suit. The downside is that you don't get the damage bonuses from her skill that way, so if you have the skill points, it's actually better to use her skill up to 4 times before ulting most of the time. So you want to skill for damage bonus, then ult, and then use your enhanced basic attack. The other thing is that if you use buffs on Qingque during her turn, she's able to snapshot that buff by using her skill. Some creators have called this buff extension if you don't want to get it confused. For example, if I use Qingque's skill and then follow it up with Tingyun's ultimate, Tingyun's damage bonus won't actually count down for that turn. So you can effectively get 3 turns of Tingyun ultimate instead of 2. This can apply to other buffs as well, and it makes a huge difference in damage. This also works for characters outside of Bronya, and it makes a massive difference in damage. And if you haven't figured it out from the gameplay, her basic attack chucks tiles. No way. Qingque never acquired damage maxing technique, but the infinite quantum energy overflowing from Qingque's body caused it to reflexively perform damage maxing in order to deal damage. In other words, in the next move following a jackpot, Qingque is effectively an Aeon. Qingque's damage is really solid for a 4-star, but I honestly think the most powerful thing about her kit is how embarrassing it is to lose to some tiny girl with really good luck. Lastly, her technique gives her 2 tiles to start with, and to be honest, it's debatable if you even want to use this, just because it makes your first hit do less damage if you get really lucky and roll tiles well. But if you're struggling with SP, then I'd recommend it. And her last trace gives her 10% speed for a turn after using her skill. If you want to maximize Qingque's damage, make sure to prioritize her basic attack over her skill, her talent, and then her ultimate. Now, before I show you which relic cave you're going to be stuck in for the next 6 months, I want to explain why people say you need E6 to play Qingque, because I hear this everywhere. Everyone's like, oh, Qingque is so good, and then I'm like, yeah, I agree, she's so good, and then they're like, no, you need E6, and then they shoot my dog, and I don't really like that. The biggest downside to Qingque is easily her eidolons, because in order to become a 25 kill streak in Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, you're going to need E6. Now, she is fine to play without E6, but a lot of her damage potential can be unlocked via copies of her character. E1 is 10% more damage on her ultimate, which is no big deal to be honest, but E2 is better because it gives her 1 energy back per tile drawn, which counts on teammates' turns as well. E3 is a level up for her ult and talent, but E4 makes one of the biggest differences for her damage, giving her a 24% chance to land a follow-up attack after her basic that effectively doubles her damage. That is the main reason people don't like Qingque, because combined with her tiles, there is a ton of RNG for her kit. But like I said, don't give up!
Big wins.
Because your next run, you can hit that follow-up every single time. You just have to keep trying and not give up. E5 is a skill and basic level up, and E6 is her last big eidolon, which gives her a skill point back on her enhanced basic attack. I didn't mention this earlier in the kit section, but her enhanced basic does not give you a skill point back until you have E6. The main reason people say that you need E6 to play her is because she siphons all of your skill points and wouldn't gain a skill point on her basic attack. Having one less character for generating SP on your team hurts, especially when you need skill points for flipping more tiles than a housing contractor. That, and with her E4 giving her double damage on some of her hits, means that her capabilities as a gremlin reach 120% of their innate potential. With all of that said though, she is very easy to build, so let's talk about that next. Building Qingque is incredibly easy. It might even be easier than cheating in a game of tiles. She only has a couple of sets that are worth using, and one of them you probably have on accident. Her best set is 4-piece Genius for the quantum damage bonus and defense ignore against quantum weak enemies. It's strong on every DPS character, but it's even better on Qingque, who actually wants to play into quantum weak enemies. You might have a set of Wild Wheat on accident though, and that set's also pretty okay because it gives speed, basic attack damage, and on the 2-piece set it gives attack bonus. You can also mix that one with the quantum set worst case, or you can go with 2-piece Messenger to get speed as needed. And lastly, the new debuff set is alright if you have debuffing supports, since I know every single one of you is farming for Acheron, for no reason in particular. For planar sets, the best option is Firmament Frontline Glamoth for the damage bonus, but it only works if you have at least 135 speed. The other option you have is Rudolent Arena, which will give you a big damage bonus on your basic and skill, and also some crit rate, but for that one, you want at least 70 crit rate. For her main stats, you're gonna want a crit body, speed or attack boots, a quantum damage orb, and an attack percent rope. Normal DPS procedure, not too complicated of stuff. She's a bit slow by default, but speed boots is still going to be better a lot of the time if you can get to 135 for Glamoth. However, with Sparkle specifically, attack percent boots will actually be a bit better since she can bring action forward to negate the need for speed, while also giving skill points. This would work with Bronya if she gave SP, but Hoyoverse decided Miss CEO was already broken enough. As for substats, prioritize speed up to 135 if needed, then go for crit and attack substats. Then again, don't feel too bad if you can't get to that speed, because the only thing harder than getting good substats is winning against a gremlin that cheats in the funny tile game. And as always, here is a little build summary for you. One thing I didn't really mention is that effect res substats are good. They are good. I mean, there's nothing else to say. They're just, yeah, you want those. Those are also fine. With Qingque being a free-to-play character, you'd assume she could use some free-to-play light cones, and she can. But of course, for the character whose entire personality is RNG, her best light cones are also RNG. The Gacha light cone, Jingyuan's signature, is her best option right now, as it is on like every other erudition in the game. But Gender Bent Himiko's light cone is also pretty good. By the way, if you want a good general erudition light cone, just as a side note, Jingyuan's is just good in general. If you do decide to pull for it, hopefully you'll get it faster than Qingque got a gambling addiction. If you don't have either of those things, Today is Another Peaceful Day is a super strong pick. But with that said, Genius's Repose can be pretty busted if you have lots of enemies to beat up. Ungender Bent Himiko's light cone is pretty strong if you have it, and Breakfast is great and craftable, while in AoE, the new Penacony craftable Erudition light cone is also pretty solid as well. Now the difference in damage from most of these light cones actually isn't super significant, since she doesn't really have a signature, so any of them will be fine. But in case you want a visual comparison, here's a little bit of a chart showing the differences in single target and AoE damage. Now the other part to hitting a Chinchillian damage is a solid team, so let's talk about that next.
There's only a few things that you need to know with Qingque. When you're building her teams, you want to play her with SP positive supports because for some reason she is a gremlin that likes to eat tiles. And every tile that she eats is a skill point, and you can't really afford to keep eating skill points or you're going to go into horrendous debt. Examples of this are characters like Qingque, Pela, and Locha. Locha is not really going to be a buffing support, but he is a healer and he's fantastic with Qingque because he can basically use his basic attack every single turn and still heal your team a massive amount, except in emergencies. Pela only needs to use her basic attack. She can use her skill, but she doesn't actually need to because most of her kit is in her ultimate. And Qingque is a character that only needs to re-up her buff once every 3 attacks from your main DPS. All 3 of these characters are great examples, and there are other ones, but it depends how you build and play those characters. For example, some people like to actually play Asta as a 1 skill and 2 basic attack kind of character. I personally don't play her that way, but you can, and it will be slightly SP positive. Not necessarily enough to make Qingque go burr, but you know, it's some amount. The other thing that you need to have to play Qingque is a winner's mentality, baby. You can't take losses. So whenever you don't hit your follow-up attack, you instantly hit the reset button. What does that mean? That means her follow-up attack from her E4 actually does a massive portion of your damage, which means that you want to play her with Topaz, is what I would say if I was a fucking liar. Do not play these 2 characters together just because she has a follow-up attack. I mean, I guess if you want to do it, go for it. It's just not super optimal, but you know, play the game however you want. And lastly, you have Mono Quantum. Bronya is actually Sparkle in this scenario, and I'll explain why. Fushuan is fantastic for this team because she's going to give everyone crit rate, and she's going to basically solo sustain the team. However, you can actually play Lynx if you have Lynx and you don't have Fushuan. That's totally fine too. You just may struggle with sustain a little bit because Lynx is going to be a 4-star support who's really optimized for preservation and destruction units, and you won't have preservation and destruction in this team, but it still should be okay at high investment. Now, Silverwolf works in this team because you're playing Mono Quantum. That means you have a 100% chance to drop the quantum weakness on enemies instead of hitting a 50-50. Or even worse. Of course, you still do have to have a built Silverwolf to hit this 100% of the time. However, if you do, you can basically face roll all the content in the game, which is absolutely insane. Silverwolf can also be played as an SP positive character if you are up against quantum weak enemies. And then, of course, there is the fake Sparkle over here. So you might be thinking, Brax, why can't we play Bronya? Why can we only play Sparkle? Well, I'm glad you asked in that insane tone. Bronya would be fine with Qingque if you had 7 skill points, let's say. Or if you had characters that were like 170 speed that only generated SP, that would be fine too. The problem is that Bronya can't actually skill every turn reliably with Qingque because Qingque actually wants to get the damage bonus from flipping tiles, and so it can make it a lot more difficult to play her with. You can technically play the 2 together, and it's fine. Bronya's buffs are so strong that it can kind of compensate in a way, but Qingque's tile flip damage bonus is fucking absurd, and you should absolutely take advantage of it. So that's where Sparkle comes in as even better because Sparkle has so many buffs that are debatably as good or better than Bronya's, and even though her action forward probably won't be 100%, we don't actually know at the time of releasing this video, even if it was just, let's say, like 50%, it would still be really solid, and it would even enable you to run attack boots on Qingque because she would be able to bring Qingque up and make her attack more frequently. The reason Sparkle specifically doesn't have a problem is because she is able to generate skill points with her ultimate, and it is a massive game changer, especially for characters that like to eat SP like Qingque and Hentai Danheng. She also completes the Mono Quantum team, and it's gonna be absolutely fantastic. I cannot wait for you to try it in a few days. To be honest, that's all I really have to say about our teams. Yeah, if you like resetting over and over, maybe if you mained Eula and Genshin Impact, build Qingque today, baby. Hit a Qingquillion damage with these awesome teams.